In this first lesson dedicated to REDSHIFT for Cinema 4D, we're going to start to use the render engine inside Cinema 4D, of course. And we're going to see what are its basic tools and where we can find them, where is the interface essentially. So where we can find all the little commands and bits and pieces of the REDSHIFT render inside Cinema 4D. So we already saw how we can download it, install it, how we can buy it, how we can use the trial version or whatever in another video. So we saw everything to get started. So now it's supposed to have the REDSHIFT render already installed. If you already have the render installed, you can start to use it right away. So the first thing you may want to check if it's actually active and going. So you want to go in the render settings, and this is also something we saw before, and it's supposed to be visible here. Now you see we have here some settings like production and RT, and you can also change with other renders engines inside Cinema 4D, but of course we're going to keep with REDSHIFT. Now in the menus here, in the drop-down menus of Cinema 4D, usually you don't have REDSHIFT if you have like the standard Cinema 4D. So you can see there is an extra menu for REDSHIFT right here. We can already like undock this by clicking on this little stripe of dots and dragging this around with the left mouse. You can drag this around. If you have like multiple screens, you can use another screen, and you can arrange the interface as you want, just like in Cinema 4D, like standard Cinema 4D. So in this case, I'm just going to keep it undocked so you can see the various part. Now in the viewport here, we have another button of REDSHIFT. So again, we can click on the little dots and undock. Now this is more for the render preview. So IPR stands for interactive preview rendering. So it's an interactive and progressive rendering process, which we're gonna see. And so these are the two most important right here, because with the first one, we can access all the various um, parts of the render engine. So like the materials, the lights, the various tools and utilities. And with the other one, we can go in rendering the viewport. Now we can press the middle mouse or the scroll wheel to change and make it 4 views. Here in Cinema 4D, we can navigate holding the Alt key, but I'm not gonna explain like too much of Cinema 4D because that's explained in another video course dedicated entirely to Cinema 4D. We're gonna concentrate in this course in just REDSHIFT. But of course, we're going to use some of the Cinema 4D, tools to create objects and other things that can be helpful also to explain REDSHIFT. So if I go to the Create menu here, for example, I can create a text. So let's go to Mesh. Let's create a text, and I'm going to customize this a little bit. So I'm going to click on the little Scene Explorer there on the right, the little icon of the T text, and I'm gonna go here in the properties. So down here we can change what we are selecting. I'm gonna change here the text. I'm gonna type REDSHIFT C4D, and then click inside the viewport to have an update and refresh. Now again, if you press the scroll wheel, we can see the scene in 4 views, which many times is handy. If I select the 3D viewport and again click on the scroll wheel, it's gonna expand that, maximize that again, which is useful when we just need to render. And for most of the time when we render, we're probably gonna be in the 3D viewport, but we can also use the other viewports. Now we're gonna start with the IPR and see what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. It's a really standard rendering because we don't have any light yet, we don't have any material, so it's a plain render, kind of boring, but we're gonna explore more and more in the following videos. So just to get started here, we can see that when we click on IPR, everything is gonna turn black, meaning that it's gonna render whatever it's in the scene, but also in terms of lights and materials. If you don't have anything, that's gonna use a standard material and a standard lighting. So it's gonna be gray and kind of flat in terms of lights. So we're gonna work more with that. Now, once we activate the IPR, we also can access extra um, well, we can navigate. We can still navigate inside the scene. This is the beauty of the interactive rendering. So we can still navigate and do whatever we want, but also we can see the render version. Now, the more we keep it still, the more it's going to improve the rendering. So it's kind of progressive rendering. So the more you move, the more it's going to like restart, recalculate. So it's basically an ongoing rendering that will stop only when we stop moving or stop doing things inside the scene, or if we stop the IPR from that menu. So be careful, because it could be a little bit too challenging for your computer if you don't have a pretty strong computer, like for graphic card especially. So if it doesn't update automatically, we can click on refresh. If we want to stop it, we can just click there and stop the IPR. Now, there are some difference between like real-time rendering and interactive or rendering, progressive rendering. There are some differences. Now, for example, in V-Ray, we can use both, and also in other um, software like Twinmotion, we can use both real-time and like ray tracing rendering, which is kind of, again, interactive and progressive. And also in a Unreal Engine, we can do that. So all these software, they all use GPU, by the way. They all use graphic card now, because graphic card is fast. The GPU is faster than the CPU, faster than the processor. So all these new engines here, they all use GPU, and many of these, they use real-time render, which is more, well, it's heavier, but also better, and also faster sometimes. But usually the best quality is with production rendering. So that like the final ray tracing or path tracing rendering is going to be the most accurate. And usually the interactive is a little faster, but it's going to help you to work directly in the scene. So there's kind of a little bit of confusion between all these different types of render engines. But you know, the production rendering will be the less interactive. Then we have the interactive, which is kind of showing you things almost in real time, and then progressively improving. And then you have real time, which is basically immediate. It's synchronized, or is running like without lagging, without delay. Now you can also open the picture viewer that you normally use in Cinema 4D. And this is a static production rendering. It's not interactive. So that's an explanation of difference between interactive and like static or like standard production rendering. And also here we have in REDSHIFT, we have its own view, its own render view, which we're gonna see shortly. And what I wanna do here is go back again in the menu, and which is this one here, where we got all the different materials and lights and everything. So let's add something to make things more interesting. And you can see here also we have the view, the render views, and then we have the materials right here, and then we have like other tools like AOV, which are like different passages of the render, different channels, which you can use in post-production in After Effects or Premiere Pro. And then you have also preferences here. So if we go into preferences, it's going to bring you to the Cinema 4D preferences in the renderer section, in the Redshift section. And this is where we can, for example, use also hybrid rendering, which means we're going to use both CPU and GPU. And you can see they're both detected, so they're both compatible. We can use both if we want to make things perhaps more with a more performance, with a higher speed and quality. And here I can also change the language. So if I set, for example, Italian, which is my language, and I restart Cinema 4D, just to want to show you this. Usually, well, in this moment, Redshift, it's only in English. It doesn't matter if you change the language of Cinema 4D, it's just gonna have Redshift in English. So I'm gonna open this first lesson scene that I've just saved. And just to show you here, if I reopen up in the, sorry, not in the rendering, but in the Redshift, if I open up the menus again, they're going to be in English. They're not going to be in your own language. So that's not going to make any difference if you change the language, if you work with Redshift. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to work with Redshift in English. I'm going to use this. And as you can see, I'm going to go slowly and step by step. I'm not going to rush things. So we're going to check all the basic things first, and then we're going to improve and advance, level by level, step by step. Now I want to add some lights. I'm going to go here in the infinite light, but I can expand this, and you can see there is not only the infinite light, we also have point light, spotlight, area light, dome light, IS light, portal lights, physical sun. Now most of these are also available in Cinema 4D. Now also, if I go in the materials, for some reason I have here materials. So these are the materials, and then I have like the lights again. So we have like physical, dome light, IES, portal, physical sun, and so they're kind of redundant. And then I have some utilities here for mapping or noise, or we'll have here substance materials, other stuff. And let me see here. Let's go back to materials. Let's use a standard material. So let's, keep it simple and standard for this first lesson. So this is a gray material. If I click and drag with the left mouse the sphere on top of the 3D object, I'm gonna apply the material. So this is, I think the quickest way you can apply a Redshift material or any other material in Cinema 4D. And once you have that, you can select the object here. We can check all the parameters. And here on the outliner, on the Scene Explorer, we can click the tag of the material. So that's the quickest path to access that material, which is RS standard, which means Redshift standard. And we have all the channels that usually we find in PBR materials, which means physically based render materials. They have all the main features, characteristics of the material, like the transparency of or the glossiness, the roughness, and so on. But we're gonna use the base color here. We're gonna make it red because Redshift, reminds of red color. So I'm gonna use red color. And let's see here. I want to use some light also, and I'm gonna go for like really basic lights in this first lesson. But let's run first our Redshift render view render. So now nothing is visible at the moment. And if I press the play button there, it's going to start to do the interactive rendering. Give it some time at the beginning. It kind of needs to set up, and then it's going to be a little bit faster to show you whatever you're doing. So if I move around in the viewport, in the 3D view, you can see it automatically updates also this little extra window. So you can render directly in the Cinema 4D view, or you can open up this extra render view window. And you can choose here, really easy, if you want to activate the real-time rendering also, which is, well, be careful not to navigate inside the scene. That's only for visualization. You navigate in the 3D space, and then you see the changing happening real time, in this case, not only interactively, but also real time in the viewport of the render, so the render view. So there is some difference between real time and non-real time. I think it's just about the speed of how quickly you can render out a 3D scene, because interactive, it's already, showing you interactively what's happening. If you turn off interactive, that's not going to work. So make sure you have interactive on with the little play button, and then you can like activate real time. I guess that real time is kind of speeding up the process, like optimizing and making things faster, improving the performance, so that you can actually see things happening in real time. But even if you don't use real time, you can use interactive. You're still gonna see what's gonna happen. Now, if you don't have the interactive render active, you don't see any change happening in there when you do changes in your scene, which are changes of camera or changing materials, changing lights, and so on. So we're gonna use now this menu again to render out the interactive progressive rendering right here in the viewport. So here also I can activate or not the RT. So I need to click there. So now that it has that little check mark, it means that it's also doing the real time. And you can just experiment and see what are the main changes. If you turn the viewport here in the 4 views by clicking in the scroll wheel, well, you're just gonna render a little portion of the screen, which is gonna make things even faster because you don't need to render the whole screen, but only that, a quarter of the screen there. So it's going to make things faster, and it's also going to help you to manage better the scene. So if we click on point light, let's start to add some light. You can see in the top view, so kind of a plan view in architecture, or top view, and then you have the side view and the front view. So that's better when you need to manage things in the scene, and you can also expand these others. Let's apply another point light. I'm going to place it here in the other side, and the first one I'm going to make it red. This other one I'm going to make it like purple to have some changes in the lighting. So select the light object, change the color, and that's it. So you can see that it's as easy as working with standard lights in Cinema 4D. If you already know how to work in Cinema 4D, it's going to be really easy. Now, nothing is visible here, so make sure that your IPR is running. And if sometimes you need to hit on the refresh so that things will show up. But probably the problem here is that the light is too dim. So let's start to increase the intensity in the light parameters. So I'm gonna select the light, go in the parameters and increase the intensity. And we can start to see something happening in there. Just it's not pretty bright. Now, there are some parameters here that will affect the strength of the light. If, for example, you use linear, well, there's going to be a less decay, so you can have a stronger light, and you can use the other one that is like more realistic, but even less strong. Now, when you use linear, you can also change the spherical, the sphere of the point light. Now, let's select this other light, then let's make it red, increase the intensity again, and we can see already something. And again, you can use this one here, which is kind of more advanced or linear. So let me switch again here, select this light, switch to linear, and increase the radius of that sphere. So quadratic will be more realistic, I guess, but linear will be, easier to adjust in terms of 3D because we can actually see the sphere, and clicking on the little yellow circles, we can arrange the size. So adjust the intensity. You can also adjust the exposure. That's another parameter which will affect the strength of the light. And when you think you're satisfied with the intensity value, with the exposure value, and you can also change here the type of units you want to use, like lumen or luminous power and whatever. So I think that's a good first result for our first scene here in REDSHIFT. And now we can change, you see, the position of the light, the intensity, the material, everything is gonna be shown real time with the interactive rendering in the viewport directly. So no need to use like extra windows if you don't want, or the render view, the Redshift render view if you don't want. You can try to activate, deactivate the real time and see what's going to happen. You can also change the quality here and adjust the quality of the real-time rendering, of the interactive rendering, and everything else. And we have a lot of tools here that we're going to see little by little, like for example, the the tools, the various tools that you have, like scatter and proxy. And also I can create more materials. I can work with the channels of the materials. Here we have like the asset manager, where we can check if we have all the textures for the materials or any other, reference that it's outside. AOV, this is, to do post-production, again, with Photoshop or After Effects. Then we have here, let's see, preferences. We already saw that. So if we go back here, we can adjust the overall uh, render, but also changing the settings in Cinema 4D. And then we also have some online help, like the manual and also like getting started stuff, tutorials. And here at the top, we can go in the render settings as we saw in the at the beginning, and you can see we can switch also here. We can switch from production and real time. So anytime you can change here the type of render engine. So I guess this will be all for this first lesson. I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please subscribe to the channel to stay updated for more videos and guides and lessons and courses about Cinema 4D, about Redshift, about also other software and render engine. Please join the channel if you want to support us. Thanks. See you in the next.